Welcome, I'm Jenny Hall. Thanks for joining me for another card making tutorial. Today I am celebrating Honeybee Stamp's 5th anniversary birthday with a fun blog hop. I'm going to create an easy scene building card, and scene building is something that I've really gotten into lately. It's so much fun. I'm using a few new products from Honeybee Stamp's release that is available today, and I'm using some fun die cuts. So I'm starting out by making some die cuts from colored cardstock. It may be hard to see with my lighting, and I apologize, but the windmill and the windmill blades are made from a light gray cardstock. I'm adding some gray Distress Oxide ink on top of the die cuts to give them kind of a look that brings them to life. They're not just a flat object. You could also do the same thing with white cardstock. You just have to add a little bit more color. And here's an example here with the grass. Another example is the hay bales, and they're made from a golden colored cardstock. And then I'm adding 2 different colors to give them a little bit of variation. I have found that if I don't let them just look very flat, if I give them more than one color, then it looks a bit more natural. And anything that looks natural is going to give your scene just a little bit more help to look real. So I'm going to create the background. We will have a background, a middle ground, and a foreground. And I'm going to give the sky a look of some natural clouds just by leaving the paper white in a couple of spaces. So I'm starting off with a very light blue of Distress Oxide, and I'm working on Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock with some blender brushes. So if I leave the sky blank in a couple of spots that I know are not going to be touched by the die cuts, then that's going to give me even a little more depth into the scene. I started off with a light blue and then enhanced some of the areas that were away from the clouds with the darker blue, and then went back in with that lighter blue and kind of smoothed everything out and went over the edges of the white area, and that's going to give those natural looking clouds. Now I want to create the middle ground, and that is going to be the grassy area. There's the grassy area that's going to come through on the piece that adheres to the card base, and then we'll have the foreground is going to be the die cut of the grass. And I figured while I have that die cut out, I'm just going to use it to give a little bit of texture to some of those areas. And I do that a lot with dies, that I see a die cut that can be used in many different ways. So I've given just a spritz to the entire panel with a mister, and then I picked it up with a dry cloth, and that's going to give that look of kind of like hazy sunspots. In nature, that would probably be bugs flying around, but I'm going to think of them as sunspots. And that piece is adhered directly to the card base. Now we're going to start creating a bit of a scene, and I have the grass that has double-sided foam tape, and that's going to raise it up. So we're now building our foreground. The middle ground is going to be what's behind the picket fence, and then the background would be the sky area. And I'm going to add some of those die cuts, the hay bales, and those are going to also be raised on foam tape, because that's going to also set them away from that sky background. Those would be what we are going to call the area of the middle ground. And then the windmill, I'm going to tuck it behind the fence here, and I'm adding it with liquid glue. I got a little generous with that glue. And then the blades of the windmill, I actually didn't use the colored side. I used just the cardstock side because it looked better having a difference between the blades and the background of the windmill. And I did use some foam tape on those blades so that they would kind of, appear to be away from the background. But it was really hard to get the foam tape not to show. But this is a handmade card, so little things like that are okay. Now I'm going to stamp the images from Way to Goat, and there are a lot more images than I used. Believe me, there's 4 goats, a pig, a rabbit, lots of ducks, just so much cuteness in Way to Goat. And it's stamped onto Bristol smooth paper, and I used a waterproof ink and allowed it just a few minutes to dry off camera. Now I'm going to do the coloring with Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens. And I always have the best luck when I use Bristol paper. Sometimes I've used watercolor paper, but it just doesn't work as well. And the method that I prefer to use, that I've had most success with, is to use my medium or darker colors, and then instead of grabbing a wet paintbrush, I just grab a lighter shade of the zigs, and it works. It just kind of blends it out together like magic. And I notice that they do dry back a little bit, and you can see that the goat is definitely not as dark. So I've used the coordinating die set to crop all of my images, including the sentiment. And that's one thing that I have to say I love about Honeybee, is they give dies for their sentiments, which allows me to not figure out where I have to place it or emboss it onto something. I can just stamp it, and I can die cut it and put that sentiment anywhere. It is wonderful. We are building our foreground now, and I've placed the little ducklings right on that die cut grass piece, as well as the sentiment. And now we have a foreground that sets itself apart from the background and that middle area. The goat was kind of like, I'm not really sure where I want to put him, but it seemed to me that he needed to go into that middle ground area. So I pried up the fence pieces just a little bit and tucked his little feet down in behind the fence, and it looks like he's in a middle area. That helps the background sky to really look like a background. I used the bottle of glue on top of the die cut to hold him in place for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Now I'm using my Marvy jewel picker and a Nuvo smooth precision glue pen, my favorite glue pen for adhering rhinestones and sequins, because there's a little metal ball at the end. And once you press that ball in, it allows the glue to come out. Otherwise, the glue will not come out. It's a very controlled way to get just a small amount of glue, and I need any help I can get. So there are the rhinestones. And here's another card that I created with the Way to Goat stamp set, and I build a scene as well with some different dies for assistance, and you can see how easy it is. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you participate in the blog hop and win lots of prizes. Go over to my blog at jennyhalldesign.com for all of the details. Thanks for watching.